Hi guys, and welcome to this week's deep dive. This is a first on the deep dive, but it's not going to be the last. We are actually having a live launch right here on the deep dive, and you are going to see more of these as the months go on. That doesn't mean we're stopping our monthly live launch, which happens on Facebook and YouTube. That's still going to happen. But we're going to be having live launches happening here, additional live launches right here on the deep dive. So make sure you subscribe, and to do that, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified every single time we go live right here on the deep dive. Now, this week's guest is my best friend in magic. I've known him for over 20 years. We've done work together, we've released products together, we've done DVDs together, and he's obviously no stranger to you guys. Let's introduce him now. It's the incredible Marc Spelmann. Mr. Spellman, how are you?
Thank you. I'm really, really well, and I'm really honoured to be doing this. A deep dive, first one I've done, I think. And yeah, all good. All good. I hope everyone out there in the internet world is well and good. Enjoying the sun in the UK.
Oh, mate, it's lovely. I've got the sun beaming in here. And you did make a point that you said it's your first deep dive. And the reason it's your first deep dive is the deep dive is really a show that's geared on focusing on a particular product. And anyone that knows you knows that you don't release a lot. But when you do, it's something that you've been performing for a long time. It's very well thought through. It's very well routined. And it's usually part of your act, it's part of your set. So you don't create magic just for the sake of releasing it. It is all stuff that comes from your repertoire, which this one is as well, because I saw the original version of this going back many years. And in fact, even recently, we were out, and occasionally we'll meet for lunch. Myself, you, and the fantastic Colin Klaus was there. And this, as well as your regular deck and your, business cards and stuff, this was the deck that when we were out, we usually do perform a little bit. And this was the deck that you pulled out to freak out some spectators when we were out and about, because obviously when people recognize you, they always want to see something. So this is something that is on you, you do use, and you use it to great effect. Yeah, it's a great trick. So before we get into this effect, what have you been up to? You've done BGT twice. You've obviously you smashed it with both Marc Spelmann and X. So what have you been doing? Because I know you've been out doing a lot of shows, whether they've been private, corporates, even cruises you've been on. So has that been as Marc and X, or one or the other? Or
combination of the two. So obviously we did I was on the show in 2018 as Marc Spelmann, then did BGT as Magician X, and both occasions, I mean, I love it. I mean, obviously you did it with the guys, 4MG with Harry, and you know what it's like. There's moments when it drives you mad, and it's panic, and it's lastminute.com, but then there's other moments that you sort of think these are moments you're going to remember for the rest of your life, really. And so I did BGT twice as myself, Magician X, then was invited to go over to AGT Champions and did the piece with Shin Lim, which has been fantastic. It was great to do. And then since then I've done BGT the Christmas special, and they had the Ultimate Magician that was end of last year. And then recently Spain has got talent. They did a European All-Stars. So it was like people from all over, USA, loads of parts of Europe, Far East, you name it, India, all flown into Madrid. And this was back in March, so not that long ago. And I did something completely different there. Went back old school. I did like effectively a card trick at the judge's desk. But that is on YouTube. Click around and you'll find it. But that was really good fun. Spanish audiences were amazing, and that was good fun. Magician X made a cameo appearance in that as well. So, but in terms of away from television, I've been doing a lot of corporates, and that's taken me all over the place. So as far as Japan, I did. There was a 1 hour special in Japan called Unbelievable, and that was all about my first audition on BGT. So they had actors playing the part of myself and Tessa, and recreated the whole story, all with obviously in Japanese, which was quite interesting to see. Very surreal.
That
So
must
that
have
was
been
an
weird.
amazing experience. Oh, it was. I mean, the guy that played me was far better looking, slimmer, probably about 6'1", and I'm sort of thinking he looks nothing like me. But I was quite happy. He was good casting, and Tessa, I think she looked about 15, which is a bit of a worry. So
So
yeah,
was this whole show? Sorry, my mic was on mute. I was speaking to you, and I thought, oh, he's ignoring me. But was this whole show like a reconstruction of? Was it like a biography of you? This whole hour special.
yes. So when you watch Crime Watch,
Yeah,
bad comparison. But when you watch Crime Watch, which for people overseas is a program where they reconstruct crimes, and you'll have narration of like the people that do the show, the presenters, and it
yeah,
are cut to reconstructions. And that's what they did with me. So they had a panel of people, like celebrities in Japan, and they then had recreated like stories. They asked me for all, and then they had sort of bits of interview with me, talking head, and it would
yeah.
cut to sort of reconstructed moments, and then this sort of team of celebrities, if you like, panel of celebrities in Japan, then basically is that your phone?
It was my phone. It is on Do Not Disturb, so I don't know how it's rung.
Unless it's Mark, which is just rude.
Yeah, very
Um,
weird.
but maybe if you've got an iPad or something like that in the room as well, sometimes that then takes the call through. But then I was in Japan when they aired the special, because then I was a surprise guest at the end. So they literally had this door open up. This panel of people have just watched this whole 1 hour special about my first audition, and then the doors opened up, and then I was there, and then I did magic
Wow.
on this Japanese panel. So I had a translator literally standing behind me. So I mean, amazing experience. Japan was lovely. It's the first time I've ever been, and so yeah. And then I did a wedding in Indonesia for, I think it was just under 2,000 guests. So yeah, and Magician X did a bit. I did a bit, and then so yeah, all over the place. Was in Dubai for 5 nights performing, 10-minute spots each night. Um, yeah,
It's incredible. It's
been
X has
amazing.
taken you around the world, hasn't he?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I think I did two. I did two performances in China, literally, like we're talking months before lockdown. So yeah, we weren't near Wuhan, so it wasn't me that brought it back. But we were in China, like literally the September and then the November, doing two performances. As a lot of people, they sort of tend to book me and X.
Yeah.
So what happens is I will come out and do the sort of Marc Spelmann bit, and then I introduce X, and then X walks on stage, obviously with a suitable moment for me to kind of quickly run off and get ready and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, it's been really, really amazing. It's been an incredible time. Cruise ship wise, was on a cruise ship back in October for Virgin Cruises. Richard Branson was on. It was a big thing for Virgin. They were doing they've got their own terminal. So when you go, I don't do that many cruises, but
Yeah.
they have terminals. When you go to an airport and you go to a terminal to get on an aeroplane, they have very similar things for the big cruise companies like Carnival and Virgin. They'll have their own terminals, but they're massive, like a terminal.
Yeah.
And you'll get on the ship, go through passport control, all that kind of stuff. And they were doing a maiden voyage from Miami to the Bahamas, and then around the sort of Caribbean and that kind of thing. So I was on the ship for that, doing a performance. So it's been amazing. I mean, really, the opportunities are very random, but
Yeah.
and but that makes it really interesting. So at the moment, I'm potentially doing some work consulting on 2 television programs, yet to see whether or not they see the light of day, as you and I both know, and anyone else
Yeah.
that's worked within the television backstage, in the pre-production. These things, sometimes they come to fruition, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But I just enjoy the creative side of it all,
Yeah.
and yeah. So it's been amazing.
So let's get on to your latest release then. So this is what we're here for. This is the effect that we're releasing today. So if anyone wants it, they can go over to our website today and pick it up. And as far as I'm aware, it's in stock in our US branch and our UK branch. It's called Solus or Solus. And we've got the trailer for it. So shall we play the trailer now? And then we'll talk about it in a bit more detail.
I'll give a bit of the history. I talk about the history, obviously, on the instructional, but for the guys that don't have it, obviously, I can give you an insight into where it's come from, why it came to be, and the trailer does kind of cover that as well. But I'm happy to, we can talk about, how it evolved and stuff. So yeah, let's do the trailer.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, this is the premiere. So take a look at this.
When I started performing professionally in the mid-1990s, I absolutely loved the classics, in particular the classic Invisible and Brainwave decks. But I had one main reservation about adding either of these 2 classic decks to my repertoire, and that was quite simply they were so good that almost every magician and mind reader that I knew was performing them. So I decided that I would have to create something that would be completely unique to me, but also tackling some of the restrictions that these classic decks can have. I wanted to leave my audience with the impression that everything could have been examined, and even have them handle the cards at some points during the routine. I wanted my effect to be so direct and simple to perform so that I could focus completely on presentation, which had to be thought-provoking, with what I like to call a peek behind the curtain. In my experience, modern day audiences absolutely love the notion of finding out a little bit about how we do what we do. But then after leading them up the garden path with a completely impossible memory demonstration, I wanted the plot twist. To leave my audiences completely baffled with nowhere to go. A deck of cards is undeniably mixed by the performer and memorized in apparently seconds. Various audience members are then asked to randomly generate a playing card. The performer, using his memory techniques and recall, is able to name one position in the pack of cards, where the performer then slowly and fairly deals down to that one card in the pack, turning it over to reveal that it is the randomly generated playing card, thus proving that they did in fact memorize every single card in every single position. But then the plot twist comes, with the performer confessing that this had nothing to do with memory and everything to do with influence, at which point every other card is turned over by the performer and the audience member by the side of them, revealing that every other card in the pack was in fact a joker. The only card that ever existed is the randomly generated card they named earlier. And then, in an instant, it is completely reset, enabling you to go to another group, another table, and perform the effect again. I have been performing Solus for over 20 years, with hundreds of performances at the prestigious Magic Circle headquarters in London. I have performed Solus close-up mix and mingle, from table to table, in parlour performances, private dinner parties, and even on stage. Solus has served me well, and I am truly honoured and delighted to finally be sharing with you my thoughts on the single card revelation. Welcome to Solus.
Really nice, really nice. And I've seen you do this for years. You showed me this many years ago, and there's so many great moments. I want to point out, so I don't know if you say it in the trailer, but it's not the same card every time.
No, it's not. This is the thing. Obviously, there are some effects where it's one particular card, and the rest of the cards are blank, or jokers, or odd backed, or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the idea behind this. Is from the audience's perspective, is that any card could be named, and that's what they feel at the end of it. I could have named any card, any performance. I actually even say, look, can you imagine? You could have gone with the black cards. This could have been a spade. It could have been a high card. Whatever the card, So you've got the impression is that any card could be named, and it does change. With every performance, there are some things obviously that I do go into in the instructional, but obviously again for the viewers, just to get a bit more of an insight. There are a few things that with the origins of this effect, obviously I state in the trailer that I love the invisible deck and I love the brainwave deck, but it was one of those things whereby even now, and especially after David Blaine, really, I mean, the invisible deck's an absolute classic, and it is a brilliant piece of magic. But especially after David Blaine did it on his special, which was like the late 90s, I think it was actually the late 90s. Everyone started doing the invisible deck, and that doesn't. Sorry,
someone is at the front door.
Ring doorbell. Alexa should have been on silent, but she's not listening.
Okay, here's White Noise by Sweet Jar. Welcome back to White Noise by Sweet Jar.
I don't know.
You now have the ability.
Right, Alexa, go into silent mode.
I won't disturb you.
Yeah, thanks. That's what you said last time. Sorry about that. So anyway, there's a lot of detail in this effect. And what I did was, when I looked at the brainwave deck and the commando deck and the invisible deck, I looked at all of those decks at the time. I mean, I'm talking like 20 plus years ago. And I thought, right, what is the strength? What is the weakness? What is the compromise? And with any trick of this nature, there is a compromise.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do was I wanted to take each individual compromise and try in a way, if I could shave some of that compromise down and minimalize it. So obviously with the brainwave deck, the invisible deck, the commando deck, no one can go near that deck of cards. It's performer only. Not that they have to go near the deck, and obviously, not everyone will want to, but I think there's a real strength when you can give that impression that they could have checked absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing when you do that as a performer is, I'm really interested, and I talk about this a lot when I lecture, and I don't lecture that often, and that is that the public's thought processes should never be assumed, and they should never be ignored. I think some of the most valuable information you'll ever get is when you really ask someone how you think something was done. So when you do a trick, you say, like really, like if I literally, I mean like drastic, put a gun to your head and said, how do you think that trick was done? You'll be amazed at times when they sort of almost hit the nail on the head. So for me, it's almost like, okay, the easiest explanation to how a card trick can be done is, it's a trick deck. They don't know what that means. They can't go into detail about it. Obviously, the classic is they're all the same card. Well, that doesn't always make sense with obviously with a brainwave deck or an invisible deck or a commando deck, because clearly they're not all the same. But it's that notion of like, oh, it's a trick deck. And I think for Joe Public, the minute that they can kind of tag a pseudo explanation onto a trick, it does diminish an effect. Not completely. It doesn't make it. But if you can make an effect, anything you do, as impossible as possible, and also cover some of the explanations, and minimize that thought process. Even the skeptics, if you can make a skeptical audience member absolutely astonished and going, okay, well, of course it would, because you could have named any card. Okay, and then now they've got nowhere to go. It's almost like the white flag comes out. I quit. Okay, you're amazing, and it's not that it's I want to have that sort of challenge aspect with anybody, but I just want to cover as many bases as possible. So I really dissected those classic decks and thought, how can I add elements to this? So I'll give you a perfect example of this. Imagine you've got a one-way deck of playing cards. Every card is the ace of spades. Just by adding 3, and this is obviously nothing to do with Solus, but the analogy will hopefully make sense. And that is, if you have a complete one-way deck of cards, every card is the ace of spades. But you put 4 cards in that pack that are regular cards, and you pencil, I can talk a little bit about methods, kind of pencil dot those cards. So now you can shuffle the cards up and say, in a moment, I'm going to get you to reach in and take out any card. As an example, oh, look, the 4 of diamonds. Now, just that one card being shown at that point now suggests that that's a mix-up deck. You kind of get away from that. They're the same, because they're not. Even though you've only shown one card. And then if you pick up the deck and you've got another couple of cards on the face, or one at the face and one on the top, that you can show casually, just really casual. Now, even the skeptical person that goes, well, they're obviously all the ace of spades, that's now been taken away from them.
Yeah.
Even though the truth is, they are pretty much all the ace of spades. And it's just looking at any effect. And that's what I try to do with anything that I do. And that is, how can I get past that solution? And that's what I've done with Solus over years. So, and another thing as well, and I mentioned this in the tutorial, is I actually started out with blank cards. But one of the things, and this is, don't get me wrong, sometimes blank cards absolutely fine, not an issue. But with a blank card, for us magicians, blank cards are every day. Yeah, blank cards, double backers, whatever. We are so acclimatized to those cards. Joe Public doesn't know what a blank card is. No one ever buys a deck of cards and there's a blank card in there. It's jokers or advertising cards. So for me, I thought I originally started out with blank cards, and then I thought, it works. The effect clearly works, and it does work with blank cards. But I thought, no, I want to have it as normal as possible. I don't want any element of it's a special deck in any way. So jokers are not special. Joe Public know clearly what jokers are, because they've dealt with them every time they've opened up a deck of playing cards. So even like something like just changing from blank cards to jokers made a difference to me. And so all of those things make a difference.
I totally understand that with this routine. The jokers are more natural objects, and people are aware of them. The other thing I can say about this effect, which makes it different to things like the invisible and brainwave and everything else, is it's more of a performance piece. You can get more people involved in it. It can be performed, like you said, you've performed it on stage, and you could do with an invisible deck, but the invisible deck it's a powerful trick. There's no doubt about that. Very powerful. It's quite a quick effect. You name a card, it's the only one face down.
Yeah. So I credit Andy Nyman on the instructional, and it was from the Get Nyman This is where I kind of changed the original presentation for this was very much kind of like getting audience members to randomly generate a card, and then ultimately at the end of it, the original version was I would sort of deal down through the cards and almost get an impression. These cards would be shuffled up, mixed up at the beginning, and then I'd put my hand down over the cards as I was dealing, and then I'd go, right, so they've generated, say for instance, like the 2 of diamonds, and I'd deal through the cards after the shuffle, and then I'd hold my hands over the cards, and you could still do it this way, and I'd hold my hands over the cards, and I'd go, it's right here. Remember, I'm not even looking at the cards, I've shuffled the cards up, but that is the 2 of diamonds. I just got a sense of it. And then now I turn it over, 2 of diamonds, everyone goes, oh my God, that's amazing, because that in itself is an interesting effect. But then at that point, I used to turn around and then say, but you know what's really interesting is that you guys have actually sensed way more than I have. You sensed that it had to be the 2 of diamonds. And then I used to turn over all the other cards, they'd all be blank, and then everyone would go, oh my God, and that was the kicker.
Yeah.
And then when I watched Nyman, who, you know, brilliant, and we all know Andy's fantastic with his taking an effect and giving it a tweak. And, you know, you can see that from the work that he's done with Darren over the years. I mean, like, you just know when there's a Nyman twist
100%.
to an effect. And he did an effect on the Get Nyman where he uses a commando deck. And I'm sure people know what a commando deck is. It's a great, again, another fantastic deck of cards. And Nyman just does this whole thing about just, I can stop lying to you now. And then he does this whole sort of pseudo revelation about how he's done what he's done. And I love that line, I can stop lying to you now.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like you've led them up to the garden path to create one moment. Now I can stop lying to you and show you the reality. And I wanted to adopt that kind of premise into Solus. So then it became they were jokers instead of blank cards. And the Joker inspiration actually came from a Leonard Green effect where, you know, like is it the Gemini twins?
Yeah, it was stolen cards, wasn't it?
That's it. Which, yeah. So they're not all jokers, but I think it varied which deck you got. But with my one, they were all the King of Spades.
Yeah.
And they were all cards from different decks. And I love that because it's odd, but for a lay audience, it's not special. It's just, he's a magician, lots of cards from lots of different decks. Makes sense. And that's where I then adopted that kind of mindset, made me go to jokers. And I thought, right, jokers are normal. Jokers are regular. Jokers, of course, they have loads of jokers. He's a magician. The amount of cards he must go through, he's got loads of jokers. Yeah. And that's what the impression I wanted to be left with was, I've got loads of jokers. I've got one card in that pack. You have no idea what it is. But not only are you guys going to randomly think of that card through influence, but I'm going to shuffle the cards up, I'm going to deal down to it, and you've got all of these different elements, and this sort of pseudo-lying moment where I say, look, you know, like on the trailer it says, you know, that it confesses that it's not about memorization and memory, it's about influence.
Yeah.
And that's very much like credit to Nyman for that, because that's where the inspiration came from, was to Get Nyman, which you know, Alakazam released, one of the first major releases on DVD that you guys did, and still to this day a really, really valuable lesson in just applying, just thinking outside the box a little bit. But yeah, so I just think things like that, you know, just sort of going, actually, but maybe it's not playing cards at all, maybe it's words, maybe it's jokers, maybe they're oddbacks, maybe they're cards from loads of different, you know, different decks. All of these things, just applying them to an effect. So with Solus, it was a case of addressing the restrictions of a brainwave deck.
Yeah.
And, you know, trying to get away from that, it's a special deck of cards, which I managed to do. On the performance that you'll see on the tutorial, it was actually at the Northamptonshire Society of Magicians. And it was Paul, who is on the Wizard Product Review, who I actually I was doing the effect on. He was standing by the side of me. And when he picks up those cards, he was like, oh, right, okay. And even he was kind of like, okay, so I can handle these cards.
Yeah.
because obviously there's a room full of magicians watching the performance at that point, and it got a really great reaction. So that is the one like sort of solid live performance for the hardest crowd ever, a room full of magicians. And but I've used Solos genuinely during the COVID pandemic, obviously, which we don't really like talking about anymore, but virtually. I still do virtual performances now, and Solos works fantastically well for virtual. It is camera, top-down view, over a table, one shot, never cut away, brilliant piece of magic, and mind-reading influence, that kind of thing. I've done it on stage, on cruise ships. I've done it sort of drinks receptions is great as well because you can do minimal handling as well. Literally, like if you've got people standing there with canapes and stuff, you can go through the cards. Everything happens in their minds. The thing that I really love about the presentation, for me, is I love a plot twist. I love the usual suspects. I love the Sixth Sense. I love that. Now here's the truth, kind of a moment.
Yeah.
A bit like X, with the reveal of X, with the video that played back and showed you hope in Isabella's cot and all that kind of stuff. I love those moments. Derren Brown, Something Wicked This Way Comes, the video at the end of that performance, with all the flashbacks to the earlier parts. For me, the best endings to a theatre show ever. And I like to employ that as much as I can. But also, a key thing with Solos is I want it to seem completely random. I want it to seem completely examinable. And I also want to do something that is multi-layered. Like on the trailer, I mentioned that I performed it a lot of times at the Magic Circle.
Yeah.
So I used to do this thing. I don't do it as often now, but back in the day, I used to do Meet the Magic Circle, which is like the general public pay ticket price, to come and see magicians at the Magic Circle. And when you're doing the close-up at Meet the Magic Circle, you'll work tables. So everyone will be gathered around, like a parlor performance, around a table. And you'll have 4 of those. So 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs. And you do the same set at each table. So rather than the audience moving around, the magicians will move from table to table, upstairs and around, circulate. And Solos was one of those routines that was absolutely perfect because they think they're getting a demonstration of like pseudo mind memory, a memory technique. And I also like this aspect of things as well. And that is when you can sort of give people a glimpse, a peek behind the curtain, because people are so much more savvy to methods and techniques. And I think that, sort of gone are the days where magicians can that pseudo, I can't explain anything to you, I think now having an element of let me show you a little bit of how this is done, I think it's really intriguing for an educated audience.
Yeah.
And you're sort of doing that, and the memory, it seems as though you get a deck, you genuinely shuffle those cards up. And I've had magicians watch me shuffle and go, well, yeah, we all know things shuffles and that kind of thing. But I've had magicians watch, and you just see me shuffling cards, and I'm chatting away, shuffling the cards, and they are genuinely mixing at that point. And then I'm just going to memorise them. And I remember when you watch me do it in the North Hampshire Magic Society, Paul is watching me and I'm going, yeah, got it, memorised. And he's looking at me going, really? And then they name a random card, and say, 17th card down. Deal 17 cards, it's at that position. Everyone thinks, that's amazing. And Joe Public thinks that that's amazing. Because they go, wow, like solving a Rubik's Cube. There's so many amazing Rubik's Cube tricks. But get a Rubik's Cube and solve it in a minute, which isn't even that quick in this day and age. But do it in a minute and people go, oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, you must have had this. So many of you people watching this, when you just do a riffle shuffle and a cascade finish, people go, oh, I love it. Just shuffling cards like that, brilliant. They get impressed by it. If you do a really nice fan of cards, people go, oh, look at that. Yeah, so it's amazing what they love it, and just doing that memory demonstration, which is completely, there is no, and just to point out, there is the minutest amount. If you can remember your surname, you can perform Solos. There is memory, but it's that easy. It's so easy. But you get to do this thing of like Rain Man memory demonstration, and you haven't even got into the trick yet. That's just presentation. And that gets everyone going, wow. And they think it's over. When I've done this at the circle, people would just clap and go, my God, that is unbelievable. And I go, no, hang on a minute. But now let me stop lying. And that's very much, thank you, Andy Nyman. But let me stop. Let me tell the truth. You know, I didn't have to memorize anything. Then you go into the revelation and you show the outcome. And it just, honestly, it's like, I've used it as an opener, but I stopped using it as an opener because it was better as a midway effect, or if you're doing a parlor performance or a table performance, after dinner performance, that kind of thing. It was perfect as a closer, and that's how I closed my Magic Circle performances.
Yeah, and it's good. I've used that memory ploy a lot, and the way I usually present it, I say that a lot of people are very impressed. If you've got a good memory, they think you're extraordinary. We've all got a good memory. You've got to remember, everything we see is up here. It's stored there. The only thing that I can do is I can access that image. But that image will be there. If I showed you 100 cards, you would see them. That image is there. So it makes sense that you should be able to locate it. And I'll explain to you exactly what I'm doing. As I riffle the cards down here, I'm seeing every single card now in order. It's all up there. So give me a number. They say 17 or 15. And I say, now all I need to do in my mind is imagine I've got an old VCR and I'm just going to go frame by frame. I'm going to see every card in slow motion. Now you've got to give me a bit of time because I'm going to have to count as they go by. And then this is all rubbish, obviously. But to them, they're going, well, it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't it be in your mind, you know?
One of the best bits of advice. I remember watching a Juan Tamariz lecture at the International Magic Convention, and I'm talking. Obviously, International Magic Convention has not been on for a long, long time. It used to be one of the best magic conventions, like London Magic Convention. It was great, and they had Juan Tamariz lecturing, and I remember Juan Tamariz did the first part was very much his sort of memorization with cards, and this is way before the book came out, Mnemonico and stuff. I'm talking probably. God, I want to say sort of late 90s. And I remember there was this one, but he got a chart out. He had a chart, a flip pad. And then he just started doing these diagrams and talking about ebbs and flows and that kind of thing about an audience's psychology. And I think a lot of the trick guys, were kind of going, just want to learn a couple of more color changes or card tricks and all that. And I remember just watching him talking about this stuff. And Michael Amar actually talks about this on Easy to Master Coin Miracles, where he says, Juan Tamariz says, if you want people to understand how truly impossible something is, you can't expect them to work it out for themselves. You have to tell them. Yeah. And it's so true, because I do an effect where I just do a 2-card location. And it's bread and butter trick that I've done for years and years and years. If someone hands me the ropiest deck of cards and says, can you do a trick with this deck? Then I can go, yeah, and I can do this trick. And it's just a 2-card location with a little bit of a twist and double lifting it and a midnight shift or midnight shift or whatever it is. And I talk about this and I say, look, I'm going to try and cut directly to your card. And a card is less than a millimeter thick. So if I am out by less than a millimeter, this doesn't work. And that line, just that, if I am less than a millimeter out, this doesn't work. And that line for a lay audience, they kind of go, oh, yeah, I mean, that is, you've got to cut. Bloody hell, yeah. And that's the sort of thing that I mean. And after listening to Tamariz talk about this kind of thing, tell them, remind them how impossible. So sometimes, when you do an effect and, you've got that revelation at the end, and just before you turn that card over, you say, and remember, you could have named any card, you could have named any position, you could have this, you could have that. The reason for that is remind them. Because then when you do that turn, you've just done that checklist about, remember, it's not a gaff deck, it's not this, it's not that. You handled the cards, you could have named any card, you could have named any position. Do you know what I mean? And then at that point, it's amplified. And then they've got nowhere to go. Because the last thing you want to, and Gary Kurtz talks about this, and he says, I mean, obviously Gary Kurtz, I mean, God, for me, one of the best close-up magicians
phenomenal
to be. Him, David Williamson, like, and that's from the international magic days of watching them lecture, where you'd kind of go, wow. I mean, we were treated to something special back then. But Gary Kurtz says, don't let anyone's sort of reaction to an impact of an effect be diminished by them trying to, that natural instinct to try and work things out. So, you know, like going, maybe they're all the ace of spades. Get rid of that before you do that reveal. And look, before we go any further, look, you know every card is different. Now they can't ask that question in their heads, even subconsciously. They have to just go, no, they are all different. Boom. Oh my God, that's amazing then. Even more so amazing. And that's what I've tried to do with Solus, is I want to end the effect with them going, it's not a trick deck because we handled the cards.
Yeah.
We could have named any card. He genuinely shuffled those cards, yet he knew it was at the 12th position in the pack. He dealt down to it fairly. He was dealing single cards, you know, and all of these things, you know, and to be clear for magicians, these are assumptions made that I've created for a lay audience, which is really important because, you know, it is a special deck in a way, and there are aspects to, you know, techniques that are used within the effect that are common knowledge to every magician. The most important thing I can say about this effect, and this is just for years of doing it, and I performed it for Christian Grace, who, you know, Christian's bringing some amazing magic out. So to have him say that quote at the beginning, he just said, he goes, what's lovely about Solus in our conversation, and then he sort of sent me this lovely testimonial afterwards, but just performing it for him and then having this conversation with him afterwards, just as friends, he was saying, he goes, what's lovely about it is, he goes, the simplicity of performance. He goes, it seems so complicated, like you are shuffling, but you're not memorizing, but everyone thinks you are. And then the fairness of the deal to that card, and then the revelation at the end, it seems so impossible, and like so many aspects are going on. But he goes, and you're getting, there's that terminology, bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is a really, really simple trick to do. I actually think it's easier to do. I've had some people say, like, the invisible deck, they kind of go, yeah, but you've got to do the calculation thing, and then the thing, and then do spades or on the clubs and the odds, and the, you know what I mean, all that kind of stuff, depending on how you set up your invisible deck. But I think this is easier to perform than the invisible deck.
Oh, 100%.
I really do.
It's a really easy trick to perform. The other thing I want to throw in, something that I really like about it. Sorry, no, go on, and then I'll say it after.
No, I was going to say, for me, like, you know, obviously, you know, for move monkeys and people like that want to do all these skill things, of course, you know, it might not be right for you. But for anybody that just wants to be able to fully focus on presentation and just have a really strong effect, that is almost like, if someone said to you, you've got 5 minutes to do one effect on someone, and you're going to do, I mean, obviously there's lots of effects we can do, but if I was doing a card effect, I would absolutely feel this would be an effect that I would do, because there's so much substance and so many elements within presentationally for the audience. Super simple method for me, and at the end of it, that person's going, so it wasn't about memory, it was all about him influencing my mind. And it just becomes something that, for me, in such a short space of time, you've created so many different aspects, different sort of elements, if you like, to an effect. It just, and that for me is where the strength of this effect lies. You mentioned at the very beginning of this about sort of like the invisible deck can seem like quite a quick effect. And for me, don't get me wrong, if you want to perform this streamlined, I think there's 4 different handlings to this effect. I can't remember because I just ramble on in the instructions. And I just throw out a couple of other ones as well. You can do this effect very quickly. There are streamlined handlings, but for me, it was born from being a performance piece at the Magic Circle for 20 people seated around a table. I've got 8 minutes, and I can do an incredible piece of magic with so many aspects to it. And this, for me, was where that was born and bred. And even now, I still use it. I was as I said to you, in October, I was on the Virgin ship, and one of the things that happens when you're on the cruise ships, which any cruise ship performer will tell you, is that you're on stage performing, but then when you're not on stage, you might have a couple of off days. I did 2 nights of performing, and I was on the ship for 5 days. And you'll get people that will ask, oh, we loved your show. And for me, it's like, if people have got the time to come up and say thank you, that was amazing, we loved your show, and share their experiences, then I always have something with me. And genuinely, on the Virgin ship, even after all these years, after everything I've done, Solus, back pocket. And that's why, and when I came back from the cruise ship, that's when I said to you, we spoke, and I said, you know what, Peter, Solus, I used to, back in the old days, it was called the only card. But then I just like Solus because it's Latin for alone. And I came back from the cruise ship and just went, Peter, Solus, it's just one of those things that's done me so well. Do you want to talk about it? And it was like, yeah, we can do it,
Yeah, because there were times quite a few years ago that I was saying to you, look, you need to release it, and you were going, oh, I'm not sure, I'm sort of working it all the time still. So I didn't think you would ever release it, if I'm honest with you. So I'm glad you have. The other thing, we're going to start wrapping up soon, so we're already at 50 minutes. But the other thing I wanted to say, which I really like about this effect, is there's a moment, and it's right at the end of the effect, right at the end. So you have now revealed the card, and then you get to that point where you go, but every other card was a joker, and you turn over the cards in your hand. Now, obviously, all attention now is on the cards in your hand. But then instantly you go, and not only these, but even those ones. And you point to the cards in front of them, have a look. And now all the attention is off you, and it's straight down here. It's just a beautiful piece of routining that psychologically will make them think they've examined everything. But also 100%. Psychologically, it shifts the attention away from you, which is what you want.
100%. So a really good analogy for magicians, without obviously giving away methods and stuff and things like that to any big degree, but it's a little bit like a shell coin. So if you imagine, you can have a shell coin in play, and you can have 4 coins, and people can look at the coins, but that shell coin enables the trick to work. So within Solus is, there's some aspects that you don't want them to touch, but they never feel the need to. And then there's other parts of it where they can absolutely go for their lives. But what happens is that cancels out that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yes, there's some sneaky stuff going on, but there's also lots of normal parts as well. And those normal elements, cards, are in a position whereby they aid so much. And that is, again, 20 years ago, looking at the invisible deck, brainwave decks, and going, right, how can I make this seem fairer? And that's all the journey. So effectively, it's 20 years of the initial creation process, but then all of the influences, the Tanneries, the Andy Nyman, to tweaking the presentation, to what I now do and still
Yeah.
do. I mean, it's still an event that I do. And I think the reason for releasing it is, one, because I have not released anything since the gallery,
Yeah.
which is over 5 years ago now. And it's something that I really think is a valuable release. I think it is an effect that anybody can do.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I think it's lovely. If you're a magician and you want to kind of get into a bit more of that mind reading aspect, you know, a lot of the time it's, you know, Colin, our really good friend, mutual friend Colin sort of, he's got peak wallets and all this kind of stuff. He goes, oh, I just can't, because I do the Rubik's Cube stuff, I do the card stuff, and he does metal bending and all this kind of stuff. He goes, but that transition into sort of going, can you focus on this person, is almost a bit of a bridge too far. But
Yeah.
something like Solus for Colin, he'll go, yeah, because that bridge isn't as far. It's a deck
Yeah.
of cards, seemingly a deck of cards, which kind of sits with him from a magical standpoint. But now it's less of a walk to that mind reading, if that makes sense, rather than
100%.
the whole business of writing things down and stuff. So it can be performed, but even if you are a seasoned mind reader, it works. You know,
Yeah.
it absolutely works as an effect.
Yeah. And it's great. So, Mark, we're going to wrap this up now because we're almost at an hour. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to our next lunch appointment where we go out and discuss magic and have a nice meal. So I'm looking forward
Lovely.
to that.
And also,
Send me some
just-
dates.
just to yeah, no, absolutely, we'll do. And just to tail off as well is that obviously there are lots of variations on the download
Yeah.
on the tutorial, but obviously I think with your your Alakazam guys, you do that thing where if there is an additional handling or something like that, you pop it into their accounts,
Yeah.
etc., things like that. So yeah, so that might be an option. And obviously, if anybody's got any, when you get it, if you come up with a different handling or anything else, let us know. You know, it'd be great to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, that would be great. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on the deep dive. I know this won't be the last time because I do know in the background you are working on some new stuff as well. So we'll see you again. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you, mate. I'll see you soon.
See you soon, buddy. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me this week on the deep dive. Solus is now available on our website. You can go and grab it. And remember, the moment you buy it, the actual instructional video will be available within your Alakazam account. And like Mark said, if we do come up with additional handlings or routines, they'll also be added to your Alakazam account. And if you come up with any ideas, let us know, or if you film them, let us know, and we can share those with other owners of Solus. It's a great trick. It's super simple to do, and you will love it. It's been part of Mark's working repertoire for 20 plus years. That shows you how strong it is and how strong the reactions are to it. As a magician, we might look at it and go, it's quite a simple premise, but all the best tricks are. So anyway, enjoy Solus. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and you'll be notified every time we go live right here on YouTube. And like I said, we'll be back next week with another deep dive, and keep your eyes out for these deep dive live launches because there are more to come. Anyway, until next week, have a great one. I'm Peter Nardi. See you later.